The night was dark, and the stars twinkled faintly in the sky above. From her vantage point in the alleyway, nestled between towering buildings that seemed to touch the heavens, Kayla watched the world move past her. She wasn't just a spectator, she was an anomaly. A small figure in a colossal, indifferent world. Her 4-foot-tall frame was hardly noticeable to the people around her. A mere blip, a faint shadow, lost amid the towering silhouettes of humans. Most walked past without a second glance, too busy, too consumed by their lives to notice a tiny alien trying to make her way through the city that was anything but hers. Kayla had never fit in, whether it was her size, her appearance, or the heavy weight of the secret she carried. She had always felt like an outsider. The humans she had met were kind enough, but there was always an invisible barrier between them. She wasn't like them, not in any way that mattered. A soft breeze rustled her short silver-blue hair, and she pulled the cloak tighter around her small body. The edges of her cloak flickered with strange, shimmering patterns, something unique to her species, a subtle glow that had never failed to intrigue humans. But tonight, she didn't care if anyone noticed. Tonight, she was lost in her own thoughts. Love. She had heard of it, of course. Humans talked about it often. Some of them even spoke about it as though it were the most important thing in the universe. But Kayla had always felt too small, too insignificant to believe it was something that could ever be for her. The thought of someone ever truly caring for her, of loving her, it seemed too far-fetched, almost laughable. She shook her head, brushing away the thoughts. Now was not the time for that. She needed to focus, to survive. The city's nightlife buzzed around her. The streets were full of sounds, distant chatter, the hum of vehicles, and the occasional shout or burst of laughter. She moved silently through the shadows, her soft footsteps almost inaudible against the bustling world. As she rounded the corner, something changed. A sudden feeling crept over her, a sensation that something or someone was approaching. Kayla's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't explain it, but she could feel it in the air, the subtle shift in the atmosphere. It was the same feeling she had sensed back when she first arrived on this planet, the feeling that something was not quite right. She froze, standing perfectly still, straining her senses. A soft rustling came from behind her, too faint to be heard by normal ears, but Kayla's alien senses picked it up easily. She wasn't alone anymore. She turned slowly, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the dimly lit alley. There, just a few feet away, was a figure, tall, human, wearing a jacket that hung loosely around their frame. The figure was moving toward her, unaware of her presence in the shadows. Kayla's breath hitched in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to disappear, but she stood frozen, unable to make her body obey her commands. It wasn't fear, at least not in the way most humans would understand it. It was something deeper, something primal, something her species had been born with, survival instincts, honed by countless generations. But the figure didn't seem to notice her. The human walked closer, his face illuminated by the glow of a nearby street lamp, revealing a concerned expression as he looked down at something in his hand. Kayla's heart began to race. She couldn't let him get too close. She had to leave, to vanish before he saw her, but it was too late. With a quick motion, the human glanced up, his gaze landing directly on her. In that split second, time seemed to stop. For a moment, everything, the world, the sounds, the breeze, faded away. It was just Kayla, frozen in place, and the human who had locked eyes with her. The man's expression shifted from confusion to surprise. He blinked, as though he didn't quite believe what he was seeing, and for a moment, Kayla wondered if she had made a mistake, if her attempts at blending into the background had been for nothing. But then something in the human's eyes softened. He didn't seem afraid. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He simply stood there looking at her. Kayla's pulse quickened, and a strange warmth washed over her, a warmth she had never felt before. It was as if, for the first time, someone had seen her, not just the alien, not just the anomaly in the city, but her. "Hey," the man said, his voice tentative, as though he wasn't sure whether he should speak or turn away. Kayla didn't know how to respond. Should she run? Should she attack? Should she hide behind her cloak and vanish like she always did? But the man's voice made her hesitate. It was kind, almost too kind for someone who had just stumbled upon an alien. She didn't know what it was, but she felt the urge to step forward, to let him see her, truly see her. She took one hesitant step, then another, until she was standing in front of him. The world around them seemed to fade as their eyes locked. For a moment, all she could hear was the rhythmic beating of her own heart. Her instincts told her to move, to leave before things got complicated, but her mind told her that this moment, this brief, fleeting moment, was different. The man didn't say anything for a long while. He just stared at her, blinking in disbelief. It was as if he had seen something that his mind couldn't quite comprehend. But then his lips parted into a small, tentative smile. You're real," he muttered, almost to himself. I thought I was imagining this." Kayla didn't know how to respond. She didn't even know how to process the flood of emotions that suddenly overwhelmed her. For so long, she had been told that she was too small for the world, too small for love, too small to matter. And yet, here was this human standing in front of her, looking at her as though she were something more than just a tiny creature from a distant planet. For the first time in her life, she felt something shift within her. A spark of hope, no matter how small it was. "Who are you?" the human finally asked, his voice low, curious, and surprisingly gentle. Kayla hesitated. She didn't know how to answer. Her real name, her true identity, was a secret. It was a secret that had been buried deep inside her for years, hidden even from her own kind. But something inside her told her that it was okay to be seen, to be known, even if just for this one moment. "Kayla," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Kayla." The human repeated the name slowly, as though he was tasting it. "I'm Liam." They stood in silence for a moment longer, the weight of the strange, unexpected connection between them hanging in the air. Then out of nowhere, Kayla felt it, the presence of something lurking in the darkness, a shadow moving toward them. She tensed, her instincts flaring to life. "Liam," she whispered urgently, her voice shaking, "we need to leave now." Liam's confusion deepened, but before he could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, echoing down the alleyway. Kayla's heart raced, and she grabbed Liam's arm, pulling him into a nearby doorway. The shadows closed in around them as they waited, barely daring to breathe. Liam glanced down at her, his brow furrowed. "What's happening? What is this? What are you?" Kayla looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and something deeper, something she had never expected to feel for a human. "Hope. I'm not the only one," she whispered. "And they're coming for us." The night felt oppressive. The shadows lingered in the alley like specters, closing in around Kayla and Liam as they huddled together. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, then stopped, only to be replaced by an eerie silence. For a moment, Kayla held her breath, her small form pressed against the cold, damp wall of the building. Liam stood next to her, his eyes darting back and forth, trying to make sense of the sudden turn of events. He could feel her grip tightening on his arm, her small hand trembling slightly, though her face remained calm and composed. The city around them was still alive, but in that alley, time had slowed to a crawl. "What's going on?" Liam whispered, his voice barely audible. Kaela's sharp eyes flicked to the entrance of the alley, her senses fully alert. She could hear their voices now, low and muffled, but unmistakable. They were getting closer, and she could feel the weight of danger bearing down on her. She had known this moment would come, but she had hoped she would have more time. She had hoped she could blend into the human world, remain unnoticed, but now it was too late. "They're coming," Kaela muttered, her voice tight with urgency. "We can't stay here, not for long." Liam looked at her, confusion still, clouding his expression. "Who are they? What do they want with you?" Kaela's eyes flashed in the dim light, a mixture of fear and something else, something deep, something raw. The human before her had no idea what he had just stumbled into. She had always been careful to keep her true identity hidden, but in that moment, she realized something. It wasn't just her safety at risk anymore, it was his too. "They're not from here," Kaela said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've been hunting me for months. They know I'm different." Liam's brow furrowed in confusion. "Hunting you? But why? What are you?" For the first time, Kaela allowed herself to look him in the eye. There was no turning back now. If he was going to be part of this, he needed to know. "I'm not human," she said softly, her words carrying the weight of years of secrecy. "I'm not from this planet. I was sent here to hide." Liam's mouth opened and closed, as if trying to process what she had just said. He stepped back slightly, his hands raised, as if trying to distance himself from the words, from the truth that had just crashed into him. "You're an alien?" Liam's voice was low, tinged with disbelief, but his eyes were fixed on her. "But you look so human." Kaela nodded, her heart heavy. "I know. I've learned to mimic your form, to blend in, but I am not human. I never was." The footsteps outside the alley grew louder again, snapping Liam out of his stupor. He glanced nervously toward the entrance, then back at Kaela. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice shaky now. Kaela's mind raced, her options dwindling by the second. She had a choice. She could leave, take her chances and escape into the night, risking the human's safety in the process, or she could stay and face whatever was coming. Her heart told her the right answer, even though every part of her screamed, "To run!" "We fight back," she said with quiet resolve, turning toward Liam. "They won't stop until they have me, and they won't stop with just me. They'll come after you too." Liam looked at her, his confusion still there but slowly fading, replaced by something else, something darker. The weight of her words hung heavily between them. He wasn't sure what was happening, but one thing was clear. He was in this now, whether he wanted to be or not. "I don't know how to fight aliens," Liam said, the fear creeping into his voice. "I don't even know how to fight anyone." Kaela smiled, though it wasn't a comforting smile. "You don't need to fight like them. You just need to stay alive." The silence was broken by the sound of footsteps entering the alley. Kaela's heart skipped a beat. They were here. She could feel it in her bones. She didn't have time to explain anything else to Liam. She had to act, and fast. With one swift movement, Kaela pulled Liam deeper into the alley, guiding him behind a stack of crates. They crouched low, trying to remain as silent as possible. Kaela's heart raced in her chest, but she knew she had to stay calm. The more panicked she became, the less likely they were to escape. The shadows at the entrance of the alley shifted, and Kaela could see the figures of two men stepping into the light. They were tall, cloaked in dark clothing that blended into the night. Kaela's eyes narrowed as she recognized them. "They're from the agency," Kaela whispered, barely audible. "They're here to capture me." Liam's eyes widened as he looked at her. "The agency? What is that? Why are they after you?" Kaela didn't have time to explain. She had no answers for him, not yet. All she could focus on was surviving. She needed to get out of the city. She needed to disappear. The two men were scanning the alley, moving closer. Kaela's mind raced. She couldn't let them find her. Not now, Not ever. The consequences would be deadly, not just for her, but for everyone she cared about. Liam's breathing was shallow, his body stiff with fear, but Kayla could see the determination in his eyes. He was scared, but he wasn't backing down. She could feel his resolve, even though he didn't understand everything. He wanted to help. For a brief moment, Kayla wondered how things might have turned out if she had never met him. Would she have been better off alone, safer? But deep down, she knew the answer. She wasn't alone anymore. One of the men stepped forward, his flashlight sweeping across the alley, and Kayla held her breath. He was mere feet away from them now. The beam of light cutting through the darkness, closer, closer still. Suddenly, Liam grabbed her wrist, his grip tight. She looked at him, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Now," Liam whispered. Without another word, he pulled her from behind the crates, and they bolted for the far end of the alley. Kayla's legs burned with the effort, but she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to. Behind them, the two men shouted, their footsteps heavy as they gave chase. Kayla could hear their voices now, their words unintelligible, but the anger in their tone was clear. They were close, too close. But Kayla was faster. She had always been faster. As they rounded the corner, Kayla grabbed Liam's arm again, pulling him toward an abandoned building. She yanked open the rusted door, and they slipped inside just as the men rounded the corner. They stumbled into the dark interior, hearts racing, barely able to catch their breath. Kayla's mind was spinning. The walls of the building loomed tall and oppressive, casting long shadows that made her feel small and trapped. There was no way out, not through the front. They had to find another way. "Where do we go from here?" Liam gasped, leaning against the wall, trying to steady himself. "We can't just keep running." Kayla glanced around, her senses alert. And then she saw it, a narrow staircase leading up to the roof. She grabbed Liam's hand again and pulled him toward it. There was only one way out of this now. "Up," she said urgently. "We go up." Liam hesitated for a moment, but then he nodded. "Okay, let's do it." As they ascended the stairs, Kayla's thoughts raced. The agency had always been a distant threat, a shadow that had loomed over her life but had never fully materialized until now. But tonight, everything had changed, and it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something bigger. Something she had buried deep inside her. The human standing beside her was no longer just a bystander in her story. He was part of it now, and that, for the first time in her life, felt like enough. The rooftop was silent, save for the soft rustling of wind as it swept across the cracked tiles. Kayla and Liam crouched near the edge, peering down at the alley below. The shadows had swallowed the figures of the two men, but their pursuit was far from over. Kayla could feel their eyes on her, even from a distance. The agency had tracked her for months, and now, with the human caught in the web, it seemed there was no escape. "What now?" Liam whispered, his voice low, strained with exhaustion. Kayla glanced at him, her chest heaving with the effort of running. Her heart raced, but her mind was calm, focused. She had learned long ago not to let panic consume her. Panic made you weak. It clouded your judgment. But in this moment, with Liam by her side, she felt a different kind of clarity. Something she had never expected. "Now we wait," Kayla replied, her voice steady though her eyes remained sharp. "They'll be looking for us, but they won't find us here." Liam swallowed hard, his gaze locked on the street below. "I don't know how you're so calm. This is insane. You're an alien. I'm being hunted for helping you." "What do we do now?" Kayla could feel his fear, his uncertainty, but there was something else too, something new, a growing sense of determination that flickered in his eyes. He was in this now, just as much as she was. There was no turning back. "We survive," Kayla said simply, her gaze fixed on the streets below. "That's all we can do. And when the time comes, we fight back." Liam's brow furrowed as he turned to her. Fight back? How do we fight back against people who are after you? People who have been chasing you for months? Kaela's mind drifted back to the dark, hidden corners of her past, the years of training, the covert missions, the constant running. She had spent her life learning how to disappear, how to fight without being seen. She had learned that to survive, you had to blend in, to observe and adapt. But now, with Liam by her side, things had changed. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival. I can teach you, Kaela said, her voice firm, though the weight of her words hung heavy. But only if you're willing to learn. It's not going to be easy. Liam hesitated for a moment, his eyes scanning the horizon, as if searching for answers in the sky. Finally, he nodded, a flicker of resolve in his expression. I'll do whatever it takes, he said, his voice quiet but steady. Kaela studied him, her heart tightening in her chest. There was so much she wanted to tell him, so much she needed to explain, but the truth was dangerous. The more he knew, the more vulnerable he became. She had to protect him, even if it meant keeping certain things hidden. The agency wouldn't hesitate to use him against her, and she couldn't afford to let that happen. Good, Kaela said, her tone softening. We'll start with the basics. First, we need to stay off the grid. No phone calls, no traces. The agency uses tech to track us, but if we're careful, we can throw them off. Liam's face twisted with confusion. Tech? You mean they can track us through our phones? Kaela nodded, her eyes never leaving the streets below. Yes, the agency has access to highly advanced surveillance. They can monitor communication, scan for patterns, and track movement. They'll be looking for anything out of the ordinary. Liam absorbed the information, his mind racing as he considered their options. So, what now? How do we hide? Kaela exhaled slowly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the roof. We don't hide. We move. We stay one step ahead, always. She took a deep breath, shifting her gaze to the city around them. The moonlight illuminated the skyline, casting long shadows across the buildings. In the distance, the faint hum of traffic was a reminder of the world they were leaving behind, a world that seemed so far away now. Kaela's thoughts drifted back to her arrival on Earth, to the long years of living in the shadows, hiding her true nature. She had come to this planet with a mission, one that had been abandoned long ago. But now, with the agency hot on her trail and a human by her side, that mission felt less important than ever. Her purpose had changed. We'll head west, Kaela said finally, breaking the silence. There's an old safe house I've been to before. It's off the radar. We'll lay low there for a while. Liam nodded, though he still had questions. Safe house? How do we even get there without being tracked? We'll take a subway, Kaela said, glancing over at him. Underground. It's harder to monitor. The agency won't expect it. Liam raised an eyebrow. You make it sound so simple. Kaela gave him a small, rueful smile. It's not, but it's the best shot we have. For the next few minutes, they remained on the rooftop, the sounds of the city growing distant as they planned their next move. Kaela's thoughts were always on the agency, on the hunt that never seemed to end. She couldn't afford to relax, not even for a moment. But as she glanced at Liam, she realized something had shifted between them. It was no longer just about survival. It was about trust, and trust, she knew, was the one thing that could get them through this. The descent into darkness. The subway station was eerily quiet when they arrived. The usual hum of the city seemed to fade away as they descended into the depths of the underground system. Kaela led the way, her senses heightened as she scanned the area for any sign of danger. The dim lights flickered overhead, casting long, ominous shadows across the tiled walls. Liam walked behind her, his footsteps heavy, but he was trying his best to keep up. His mind was still reeling from everything that had happened. The revelation, That Kayla wasn't human, the agency on their tail, the constant threat of being discovered. But despite the fear that gnawed at him, there was something else, something that kept him moving forward. He didn't know what it was, but he couldn't deny the connection he felt to Kayla. There was a bond between them now, one forged in the fires of danger and uncertainty. He didn't fully understand it, but he trusted her, and that was enough for him to keep going. Kayla paused at the edge of the platform, her eyes scanning the tracks. The train was coming. She could feel the vibrations in the air, the distant rumble of the approaching train. But her thoughts were elsewhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "There's something off," she muttered, her gaze flicking over her shoulder to Liam. "Stay close." Liam's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Is someone else here?" Kayla didn't answer immediately. Her eyes narrowed, her senses reaching out, feeling the air around them. Something was wrong. Something had changed. And then, in the blink of an eye, it hit her. A sudden shift in the atmosphere, like a predator had entered the room. Her instincts screamed at her, and without thinking she grabbed Liam's arm and yanked him back. A split second later, the silence of the station was shattered by the sound of gunshots. The subway station erupted into chaos as the gunshots rang out, their sharp cracks reverberating off the walls. The initial shock froze Liam in place, his mind scrambling to comprehend what was happening, but Kayla's grip on his arm was unyielding, pulling him away from the sound of the shots with terrifying precision. "Move!" Kayla hissed, urgency cutting through her voice. Liam snapped out of his paralysis, adrenaline coursing through his veins. They sprinted down the platform, the bright lights overhead blurring into a streak of white as they ran. Behind them, the train screeched to a halt, but they didn't stop to see if it was theirs. They couldn't afford to waste a second. "Where are we going?" Liam gasped, trying to keep up with Kayla's swift movements. His legs burned, but the pounding of his heart drowned out the pain. "There's a hidden passage on the far side of the station," Kayla said, her voice low but steady, each word carrying a sense of quiet urgency. "We can't let them corner us." "Not yet." Liam's mind raced. Who the hell was that? Was that the agency? What the hell is going on, Kayla? Kayla didn't answer immediately. She focused on the tracks ahead of them, scanning their surroundings for any sign of pursuit. The faint sounds of footsteps echoed through the tunnel, but it wasn't just the noise of random commuters. It was the unmistakable sound of a coordinated search. They weren't alone. "We're being hunted," Kayla said finally, her voice tight. "I knew it was only a matter of time. They've tracked me before. I thought I had more time." Liam felt the blood drain from his face. The cold reality of their situation hit him hard. He wasn't just helping an alien escape, he was helping her survive. But how could they survive something like this? How could they outrun an enemy that had endless resources? "Who are they?" Liam pressed, his voice barely a whisper now, as if speaking too loudly might attract their attention. "Doesn't matter," Kayla answered swiftly. "What matters is that they want me dead, and they'll stop at nothing to make it happen." They rounded a corner, Kayla leading them deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels of the subway station. Liam's breathing was ragged, his head spinning. From the sudden turn of events, everything he thought he knew about the world was slowly unraveling. A tiny alien being chased by a mysterious agency that seemed to know everything about her, and somehow he was dragged into the middle of it. Kayla shot him a glance, her expression intense. "Stay close. Don't say a word unless I tell you." Liam nodded, his eyes wide with uncertainty, but his trust in her had grown stronger with each passing second. There was no turning back now. They were in this together. They reached the far side of the station, and Kayla led them to a hidden alcove, tucked away behind a row of service doors. She paused, her ear pressed against the wall, listening for the sounds of their pursuers. For a long moment there was nothing but the sound of distant footsteps, the faint hum of machinery. Then, without warning, the door slid open with a soft mechanical hiss. Kyella motioned for Liam to follow her. "This way," she whispered. Inside, the passage was narrow and dark, with only the faintest glimmer of light from emergency bulbs along the ceiling. They moved quickly, Kyella always a few steps ahead, as if she knew this underground maze better than anyone. Liam's mind was still reeling from the encounter. He had barely processed the gravity of the situation before they were moving again, running for their lives. "I know this is a lot to take in," Kyella said after a while, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you need to understand that the people chasing me are not ordinary." Liam's brow furrowed as he glanced at her. "What do you mean, not ordinary?" "They have technology that can track us anywhere. And not just us. Anything that's out of place, anyone who doesn't belong." Kyla's voice dropped lower. "They've been hunting me for years, and they've killed people who've helped me before." Liam's stomach churned. "So I'm next, huh?" Kyella didn't answer immediately, but her eyes softened. She turned and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You don't have to be part of this, Liam. I never wanted you to be involved." "I'm already involved," he said, his voice more forceful than he intended. "I don't know why, but I can't just walk away now. Not after everything. Not after seeing you, being with you." Her eyes widened at his words. There was a brief moment of silence between them before Kyla spoke again, her voice low, almost hesitant. "You don't know what you're saying. There's more at stake than you realize. If they find you—" "I don't care about that," Liam interrupted, shaking his head. "If they're going to come after me, then I'll fight them. I'm not going to run, not anymore." Kyella regarded him for a long moment, and for the first time, Liam saw something vulnerable in her eyes. It was as if, for the briefest of moments, she let her guard down. Then, with a deep breath, Kyella nodded. "All right, but if you're with me, you need to be ready for whatever happens next." They continued down the passage, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Kyella's mind was racing. She had never expected Liam to make this choice, but now that he had, it only made her more determined to protect him. She couldn't let him get caught up in this, couldn't let him be just another casualty in the war she had been running from for so long. The passage twisted and turned, each corner leading them deeper underground. Kyella didn't stop, didn't speak again until they reached a steel door with a complex locking mechanism. "This is it," she said, pressing a hidden button on the wall. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a small, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with old equipment and makeshift furniture, evidence of someone who had lived here for a long time. Kyella stepped inside, but Liam hesitated. "This is your safe house." "It's temporary," Kyella said, her voice calm, but there was an edge to it. "We'll rest here for the night, but we can't stay long. They'll find this place soon enough." Liam looked around the room, his mind spinning. Everything felt like a blur, like he was trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Yet, despite the overwhelming fear gnawing at him, there was something else, a strange sense of purpose. He had made a choice, and it felt like the right one. Kyella turned toward him, her face serious again. "You'll need to get some rest. You'll need your strength for tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Liam echoed, confused. "What's happening tomorrow?" "We move again," Kyella replied, her voice grim. "They'll be searching for us. We need to keep moving, keep ahead of them. But tomorrow, we make a plan. We find out what they want with me, and we figure out how to stop them." Liam nodded, his mind still reeling. He wanted to ask more questions, but Kyella had already started preparing the room, gathering what little supplies they had. The silence between them was heavy, filled with a tension that neither of them dared to break. Finally, Kyella spoke again. "Liam, no matter what happens, remember this. We're in this together, and we'll get through it together." Liam gave a small, uncertain nod. There was still so much he didn't understand, so many pieces of this puzzle that didn't make sense. But one thing was clear, Kyella was right. They had to stick together, and somehow, against all odds, they would survive. The dim light of the room flickered above them, casting long shadows across the makeshift shelter. Kayla sat hunched over a small table, her fingers moving quickly over a series of diagrams, her expression intense. Her movements were precise, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed the weight of the situation. Liam stood by the door, eyes scanning the dark corridor outside. They were deep in the bowels of the subway station now, miles away from where the chase had begun. It had been hours since they'd slipped into hiding, but neither of them felt safe. Not yet. "What are you planning?" Liam asked, his voice cutting through the silence. Kayla looked up at him, her eyes narrowed. "We're not running anymore. We're going to find out what they want with me. We need answers." Liam had been thinking the same thing, but the way Kayla said it made the gravity of their situation sink in even deeper. Answers? How could they find answers when they didn't even know who they were or why they were chasing Kayla? Liam stepped closer, leaning over the table to look at the diagrams. It was a mix of strange symbols, maps, and what looked like schematics for some kind of advanced technology. None of it made sense to him. "Kayla, none of this makes any sense," Liam said, frustration creeping into his voice. "What are you even looking for? How do you know this will help?" Kayla's lips pressed into a tight line, and for a moment she didn't speak. Her gaze turned back to the diagrams, tracing the lines with her finger. "I know what I'm looking for. I've been running from this for years, but there's something I haven't told you. Something crucial." Liam felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about?" Kayla took a deep breath, then turned to face him fully. Her eyes were darker now, haunted by the weight of her past. "The agency that's chasing me, they don't just hunt aliens. They've been after humans, too." For a long time, Liam stared at her, confused. "What? What do you mean they're after humans?" Kayla exhaled sharply, sitting back in her chair. She was silent for a long moment, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Finally she spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "The agency isn't just interested in aliens like me. They're interested in anyone who's touched the otherworldly, anyone who's had a glimpse of something beyond our reality." Liam's heart skipped a beat. "Wait, are you saying they're after people like me? But why?" "They want to use you," Kayla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They want to control you, use you to unlock secrets of the universe, things they believe can give them power beyond imagination." Liam recoiled, stepping back from the table. "That's insane. What kind of power are we talking about?" Kayla's expression darkened even further. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's not something we can let them have. Not if we want to survive." Liam felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. The implications of her words were staggering. The agency wasn't just hunting Kayla, they were hunting him too. And the more he thought about it, the more everything seemed to fit. The strange way he'd been drawn to Kayla, the odd sensations he'd felt when they first met, it wasn't just coincidence. There was something bigger going on, something that connected him to this terrifying game of cat and mouse. "How do we stop them?" Liam asked, his voice steady despite the rush of fear that was building inside him. Kayla stood up, the decision already made in her mind. "We take the fight to them. We don't run anymore. We find their base, and we destroy it." Liam's stomach churned. "Destroy it? You can't be serious. We have no idea what we're dealing with here." "I know," Kayla said, her eyes flashing with determination. "But if we don't stop them now, they'll keep coming. They'll keep hunting us, and eventually they'll find everyone who's ever helped us. I won't let that happen." Liam swallowed hard. He hadn't expected things to escalate this quickly. His mind was still trying to process everything Kayla had just revealed, and yet here they were, at the brink of a life-or-death decision. "But we need more information," he said, shaking his head. "We can't just barge into their base without knowing what's waiting for us. There's got to be a way to figure out their plan first." Kayla's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. "That's why I'm here," she said, moving to a different part of the room where she had been storing various objects. She picked up a small, strange device from the table. It was metallic, sleek, and alien in design, unlike anything Liam had ever seen. "What is that?" Liam asked, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. "This is a tracker," Kayla explained, her voice calm but filled with purpose. "It will lead us to their base. It's a piece of technology they've been using to track me, but I've modified it. Now it'll show us where they're operating." Liam's eyes widened. "Wait, you have their tracker. You're sure it'll work?" Kayla nodded. "If we can get close enough to their operations, this device will point us in the right direction. I've used it before, but I've never had the chance to get close enough to find their main hub. This is our best shot." Liam felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly tempered by the reality of their situation. A tracker wasn't going to guarantee their safety, and even if it did point them to the agency's base, getting inside would be another battle entirely. Kayla could see the doubt in his eyes. "Look, I know this seems impossible, but it's our only option. We don't have the luxury of waiting anymore. They'll be coming for us, and the longer we hide, the more people will get hurt." Liam's gaze locked onto hers. The intensity of her words, the conviction in her eyes. It was hard to argue with her now. He didn't know what kind of battle they were walking into, but he knew that he couldn't let her face it alone. Not now. Not after everything. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Let's do it." Kayla smiled, a flicker of relief passing through her. She knew that with Liam by her side, they stood a better chance than ever. They didn't waste another moment. Kayla packed the necessary supplies, and they left the shelter without a second glance. The subway tunnels stretched out before them like an endless maze, but they didn't need to find their way through the labyrinth. They had a purpose now, a destination, and as they moved forward, the sound of their footsteps was drowned by the distant echoes of a battle they were about to fight. The agency wasn't just hunting them anymore. Now it was personal. The last of the city's lights flickered out as Kayla and Liam stood at the edge of the towering facility, hidden beneath the shadow of a ruined skyscraper. They had followed the tracker through desolate streets and underground tunnels, each step taking them closer to the heart of the agency's operation. The night air felt heavier now, laden with the weight of their decisions and the consequences that hung in the balance. Liam glanced over at Kayla. She was standing taller than he had ever seen her, her usual hesitation replaced with a fierce determination that matched the gravity of the situation. The fire within her was unstoppable now. They had come too far to turn back. "This is it," Kayla whispered, her eyes locked onto the looming structure ahead. "This is where it ends." Liam swallowed hard. "And what exactly are we walking into?" "I don't know," Kayla replied, her voice low, almost uncertain. "But we're going in, no matter what. We're going to stop them from using the technology. We're going to stop them from hurting anyone else." They exchanged a look. Both knew the risks. This wasn't just about saving themselves anymore. This was about preventing the agency from gaining control over something that could change the course of humanity forever. As they approached the entrance, Kayla checked her modified tracker one last time. The red dot on the screen pulsed faintly, indicating they were very close to their target. Her fingers hovered over the small device she had been carrying since the beginning, ready to activate it if necessary. Liam stepped forward, his hand reaching for the door. The cold metal felt alien beneath his touch. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he sensed the oppressive presence within, the sense of being watched. He hadn't felt it in a while, but it was undeniable now. They weren't alone. The door clicked open with a soft hiss, and they slipped inside. The interior was nothing like what they had imagined. The facility was vast, stretching far beyond their view, filled with metallic corridors that seemed to stretch on endlessly. The soft hum of technology vibrated through the air, a constant reminder of the power the agency wielded. It was a world of high-tech equipment, clean lines, and unfeeling precision. "We need to find the control room," Kayla murmured, scanning the environment. Her eyes narrowed. "This is where they keep their secrets." They moved quickly through the corridors, staying to the shadows, avoiding the occasional patrol of guards. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the facility, but also deeper into the unknown. There were moments when Liam felt like they were walking into a trap, but Kayla's unwavering confidence kept him going. They found an elevator that led them to the lower levels. As the doors slid open, the air became thicker with tension. The basement of the facility was filled with rows of high-tech machinery and large monitors displaying complex data. But none of that mattered right now. They were here to find the core, whatever it was that the agency had been hiding, whatever technology they had been using. Kayla led the way. Her heart was pounding in her chest, her mind racing with thoughts of the past, of everything that had brought her to this point. Every step felt like it carried the weight of the unknown, but it was a weight she was ready to bear, for herself, for Liam, for humanity. They reached a massive vault door, guarded by 2 security guards. Kayla didn't hesitate. In a fluid motion, she raised her hand, and the small device she'd been carrying began to emit a faint, high-pitched hum. The guards didn't notice them approaching until it was too late. Liam acted first, rushing toward one guard while Kayla dealt with the other. They moved with practiced precision, each of them taking down their respective targets without a sound. Within moments, the guards were unconscious, and the vault door lay open before them. Inside the vault, the scene was even more disturbing than they had imagined. The room was filled with rows upon rows of glass containers, each one holding a shimmering, otherworldly substance. It wasn't the substance that drew their attention, though. It was what lay at the center of the room. A towering figure, encased in a cylindrical pod, stood at the heart of the vault. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were unmistakably alien. Long, sinewy limbs, and a body that pulsed with an ethereal glow. There were wires and tubes connected to its form, monitoring its every movement. The creature appeared to be unconscious, suspended in time. "What the hell is that?" Liam asked, his voice tight with shock. Kayla's expression darkened as she stepped closer to the pod. "This is what they've been after. This is the being they've been studying. It's not just alien, it's something far more dangerous." Liam's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, more dangerous?" Kayla turned to him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "They've been trying to harness the power of this creature's DNA, its abilities, the energy it can manipulate, but they don't know how to control it. If they succeed—" Her voice trailed off as the implications hit Liam like a wave. If they succeeded, the agency would wield unimaginable power, power that could alter the course of human history. He clenched his fists. "We have to stop them," Kayla nodded. "We will. But first we need to destroy this facility. We need to stop them from ever using this creature's power again." Liam didn't need another word. He moved to the control panel nearby, where various screens blinked with live data. He didn't understand most of it, but he knew enough to recognize the self-destruct sequence. He hit the button without hesitation, his mind set on one thing: getting out alive. The countdown began immediately. 15 minutes, Kayla said, her voice calm despite the urgency. "We need to move." They turned and made their way back to the elevator, racing against the clock. But as they neared the door, a new voice echoed through the speakers, a voice they had both come to dread. "Kayla," the voice said, dripping with malice, "you thought you could escape, It was Agent Riker, the one who had been hunting them for so long. Kayla's hand tightened around the tracker. She could feel him closing in. "We need to hurry," Liam urged, his voice strained. But Kayla had already made up her mind. "This ends now," she said, her tone filled with finality. They broke into a sprint, dodging more guards as the countdown continued. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the threat of imminent destruction. Kayla led the way, knowing every inch of the facility like the back of her hand. When they reached the surface, the first explosion went off, shaking the ground beneath them. The facility was already coming down. They didn't look back. The final explosion sent a shockwave through the city, but Kayla and Liam kept running. They knew they wouldn't be safe until they were far away from the ruins of the agency's secret hub. As the dust settled behind them, they knew they had won, at least for now, but the agency wasn't finished, and neither was Kayla. She had learned that survival wasn't just about running. It was about fighting, about standing up for the future, no matter the odds. And as long as she had Liam by her side, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The final lesson rang clear in her mind. In the face of power, love and loyalty are the greatest forces of all. The end.